We're now ready for the final step, and that is to put the top onto our base of our table. We'll first want to, as you recall, we had glued up the panel. The panel is now obviously out of the clamp. It has been sanded, and our good side has been determined, and we're ready for it to assemble. It needs to be finish sanded before we assemble it. As a sub-assembly, you can do it at that point. So you'll cut, and we made our panel an inch wider and an inch longer, so that it would have we would have room for any errors or whatever, and we would cut off on the sides to our width, and we're ready to cut and lay it out for our cross cut. I'm using this moving table. It keeps everything square and lined up. I do want to make note of the fact that here I'm showing the blade without a guard at this time, just for purpose of display. I do recommend strongly that you always use a guard when you're working with a power tool, especially a table saw. So anyway, we've made our cross cuts. It's now the width and the length are correct, which is 17 inches. We're ready to take it over and prepare our base for the final assembly. You'll want to remember that as you've made your cuts, you want to sand your edges, you want to sand the corners, and give it that nice, a very comfortable round over, and leave no sharp corners. That's one of the points. It shows that you cared enough to do the extra steps to make your project really look like a professional job. So we just want to sand that off and sand the edges, the corners, just slightly round them over. It doesn't have to be dramatic, just give a smooth contour. Now it's ready to receive the base. The base, on the other hand, may have issues. The side rails may be a little high, or I call proud, of the leg, so we have to make sure that everything is flush and even all the way around, that all the rails, the sides, the back are flush with the leg. I accomplished that by using a 3x21 belt sander. You can have it and lightly follow your contour and get it flush with the leg. As you can see, though, this is a small project, so if I were to use this on this without having it tethered, it would just fall right out or pull right out from under me. So I'm using Jorgensen clamps on the bottom of the leg to secure it so that it will stay put, and also gives me a platform to work from, so that I can then come in with my belt sander and finish it off. The final step there is to check your work, lay your square across there, and make sure that it's flat, so that when you put it onto your top, it will be nice and secure and you won't have gaps. Because again, that shows the extra effort you went to do your project. So we're ready to put the base to the top now. With this being an inset side, I want to measure the area around from the leg, not from the inside of the panel, but from the leg, so that it's 3/4 of an inch. You have made your base and your top to allow for that overhang. You'll see 3/4 there, 3/4 here, a little bit there, and 3/4 there. So we're ready, and we check our other side as well to make sure that it's lined up. There we go. And we've checked the sides. So now it's ready. But if you try to screw it as we have made the pocket holes inside the panels here, it's going to move on you. So I always like to use a clamp, and now that I make very small marks at the corners, right in here and here, to make sure it's centered with my 3/4 inch overhang. Then I take my clamp and make sure everything stays in line when I get ready to put the screws through to the top. And here is where, when you clamp this down, make sure that you have a pad or some protection for your top, because the worst thing for any woodworker is to find when he's finished with this project, turns it right side up, and there's a big divot or a big gash from a piece of wood that happened to be on the table. Just a word of wisdom for all of you that may be doing this project. So I need to readjust this, make sure everything is tight, check my marks to make sure they're lined up. I'm ready to go, and we're ready to put the screws into the cabinet through to the top. We've made sure when using our jigs and our fixtures that the screws would only go about 1/2 inch into our wood, so they will not go through the top. Very important. So, with that aside, we're ready to put our screws in the front rail. And just make sure that they're up snug and tight. You don't want them to bury into the wood. And we then use our pocket holes on the side. And I am using a right angle a right angle drill. This makes the job a whole lot easier. Some of the other tools that I've used, there's not enough room in here, but with this I can kind of cheat a little bit. We don't call it cheating, we call it good workmanship. And it's tight, and you just go on with the rest of them around the perimeter, and then put your other screw in the front, and with a little bit of luck, you have your finished project all ready to go. Now you're ready to decide whether you want to paint it, stain it, and how you want to finish the top. Thank you so much. It's been a joy sharing with you, and I wish you all the best of luck. Be safe and be well.